It started with a quiet breakfast. Not the peaceful kind. No, this one had weight. Brenda sat across from me, her eyes glued to her phone, a slight smirk on her lips. I asked her something, what time her meeting was, but she didn't even look up. Just said, later, like I was interrupting something important. That's when I knew. The emotional distance wasn't new, but today it felt like a chasm. She hadn't touched her coffee. Brenda always drank her coffee first. That was her tell. And I had a gut feeling it had a name. Marcus. Her ex. I'd heard that name in hushed phone calls before. No, Marcus, not now. I can't talk here. That kind of thing. She always said it was about custody paperwork or some unresolved trauma she needed closure on. But closure doesn't require 3-hour phone calls at midnight. Something was off, and I wasn't about to sit around playing the clueless husband. I wanted answers. And this time, I was going to get them without tipping my hand. So I made a call that afternoon. Not to a friend. Not to Brenda. To someone else entirely. A private investigator. The private investigator's name was Carl. Former military, no nonsense. Sharp eyes that seemed to read every corner of a person's soul. We met in a small diner on the edge of town. The kind of place with greasy menus and stale coffee. Perfect for inconspicuous conversations. I slid a photo of Brenda across the table, along with a few names and details. The gym she claimed to go to 3 times a week. The coworker she mentioned way too often. And of course, Marcus, the ghost from her past who suddenly seemed very alive in our present. Carl didn't blink. You want surveillance, GPS, photos, timestamps? All of it, I said. And be discreet. I don't want her suspecting anything. He nodded and left without another word. That was the beginning of the longest week of my life. I acted normal. Made dinner, folded laundry, kissed Brenda on the cheek when she got home late, and muttered something about client drama. I even smiled when her daughter, Karen, rolled her eyes at me and made some snarky comment about how I didn't get her mother. I played my role to perfection, but every second of it was a performance. Beneath it, I was boiling. Karen, by the way, was 23, lived with us rent-free, and treated the house like a hotel with room service. She worshipped Brenda and hated me for reasons she never cared to hide. I didn't push back. Not yet. For days later, Carl called. You were right, he said flatly. She's seeing him. Marcus. My stomach clenched. Even expecting it didn't soften the blow. She's been to his place 3 times this week. No client in sight. I've got photos, video, everything. He emailed the files. I didn't open them. Not yet. I just sat there, staring at the screen, letting the confirmation settle into my bones. Brenda wasn't just drifting emotionally. She had crossed a line. A line she swore she would never approach again. Marcus wasn't just her ex. He was abusive. Violent. I remembered the stories she'd told me in tears during our early years together. The bruises she hid. The trauma she carried. And now, she had run right back into the arms of the man who broke her. And left me to rot in the shadows of their reunion. But I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to scream. No, I was going to do something far more satisfying. I was going to dismantle her world. Quietly, legally, and with precision. I spent that evening reviewing the evidence. Every frame, every timestamp, every kiss she thought was hidden behind a tinted car window. Carl had done his job well. Too well, honestly. The images seared into my mind like acid. Brenda smiling as she leaned into Marcus' chest. Marcus grabbing her by the arm. Not lovingly, but with the same aggression she once swore she feared. And then there was a video. Short, shaky, but clear. Brenda entering Marcus's apartment building just before 9 p.m. She didn't leave until close to 2 in the morning. I watched it once. Then I closed the file. I didn't want to relive it. I didn't need to. I had confirmation. And now I had a direction. But I needed to be careful. Brenda was impulsive, but not stupid. She'd smell anything out of the ordinary. So I kept up appearances. I even scheduled a weekend dinner for just the 2 of us, like I was trying to rekindle the magic. She agreed too quickly. That night at the restaurant, she looked bored, distant, kept glancing at her phone. Marcus texting you? I asked casually, stabbing a piece of steak. Her eyes narrowed just for a second, but that was all I needed. That micro-expression told me everything. She tried to laugh it off, but I let the silence linger just long enough to make her squirm. Then I smiled. Just kidding, I said. She didn't smile back. When we got home, she went straight to the bedroom. I sat on the couch with a glass of bourbon, thinking. The next day, she dropped the bomb. I'm going to visit Marcus, she said bluntly, not even trying to soften the blow. It's his birthday in a week. He invited me to stay for a few days. Maybe longer. I raised an eyebrow. You're leaving me to go stay with your abusive ex? Brenda crossed her arms. He's changed. You don't know him like I do. Didn't you used to say the same thing before every bruise? I asked quietly. She flinched, but not enough to change her mind. Then came Karen. Oh my God, just let her go, she snapped. She's not your prisoner. You don't control her. She can make her own choices. Maybe if you weren't so cold all the time. I held up a hand. Fine. Go. Stay as long as you want. They both looked surprised. I'll even draw up a temporary separation agreement, I added calmly. Just so we're clear on responsibilities during your little vacation. 30 days. No obligations. No support payments while you're gone. You'll be free to do whatever you want. And so will I. Brenda blinked, hesitating. But her ego wouldn't let her back down. Fine, she said. Send it to my email. I nodded. Already did. I had prepared the document 2 days ago. She didn't even read it before signing. And with her signature, she had just given me the green light to burn her life to the ground. The morning Brenda left, she didn't even hug me goodbye. Just wheeled out her suitcase and waved lazily over her shoulder like she was going on a spa retreat. Karen stood in the doorway, arms folded, wearing an oversized hoodie and that perpetual smirk she reserved just for me. She's finally doing something for herself, Karen said. I nodded. I hope she enjoys it. Every second of it. Brenda drove off in our second car, the one still registered in my name. I watched from the window until she disappeared down the street. I gave it 10 minutes, then I got to work. The first thing I did was log into our joint bank account. Over the past 2 weeks, I had slowly transferred my half into a private account. Not in chunks that would raise suspicion, just small, timed moves. But now that Brenda had formally agreed to our temporary separation, that account was no longer joint in any legal sense. I emptied the rest of it. Savings, checking, investment fund we'd been building for Karen's future, all gone. Next, I changed the passwords on everything I could. Streaming accounts, cloud storage, our shared calendar, even the Nest thermostat she always controlled from her phone. Nothing dramatic, just erasure. Like I was already moving on from a life that didn't want me in it anymore. Then came the important part. The house. I called my lawyer, who had already been briefed. Brenda had unknowingly waived her right to financial support during our 30-day separation. It was in the fine print. She had asked for space. And legally, I was now free from any obligation to cover her expenses. That included mortgage, insurance, utilities, all of it. I suspended auto payments. The lights would stay on for a few weeks, but the pressure would start building quickly. And when it did, neither Brenda nor Karen would have any idea what hit them. But I wasn't done yet. I had booked a trip the day Brenda signed the document. Non-refundable, all-inclusive. Jamaica, 7 nights. Oceanfront suite. I packed a single carry-on, grabbed my passport, and locked the house behind me. On the way to the airport, I left a sticky note on the fridge. See you in 30 days. Or not. M. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I felt free. Next stop, peace. When the plane touched down in Montego Bay, I didn't feel like the same man who sat silently across from his wife at that cold breakfast table. I stepped off the aircraft and into humid, golden air that wrapped around me like a fresh start. I hadn't taken a vacation alone, ever. Brenda never liked to travel unless it involved couples massages or Instagram photo ops. Karen always tagged along, turning every family getaway into a chaotic mess of complaints and expensive whims. But this trip? This was for me. No drama. No questions. No false smiles. The resort was quiet, luxurious, nestled between the ocean and jungle. I checked in using my new private card, walked barefoot along the beach at sunset, drank rum out of a pineapple. For the first time in years, I slept without grinding my teeth. By day 3, I'd stopped checking my phone. Brenda hadn't called. Karen hadn't texted. I assumed they were too busy enjoying their Marcus reunion to worry about what I was doing. Or maybe they'd noticed something was off and were stewing in panic. Either way, I didn't care. I struck up conversations with strangers at the swim-up bar. Told one guy I was newly single. He laughed and raised his glass. Hell of a way to celebrate freedom. I agreed. But part of me wasn't just celebrating. It was calculating. Because I knew the storm was coming. Brenda would run through the last of the grocery cash. The mortgage payment would bounce. Karen would try to use her mother's credit card and discover it was declined. And the best part? I wasn't violating a single law or agreement. Brenda had signed it all. She handed me the sword, thinking I'd never use it. On day 5, I got an email from our security system. Multiple failed attempts to log in. It had begun. I sipped my drink and smiled. Let them feel the consequences of their own choices. Let Marcus show his true colors. Let Karen learn what life looks like without a free ride. They chose this, and I wasn't coming to save them. By the time I landed back home, the fallout had already started to ripple through every crack Brenda left behind. The neighborhood was quiet when I stepped out of my Uber. Our front yard looked unkempt. Karen must have thought lawns mowed themselves. A stack of unopened mail was wedged into the box, most of it red-stamped notices and overdue bills. I let out a slow breath. Good. Everything was unfolding right on schedule. I walked inside, dropped my bag, and turned on the lights. They still worked, for now, but I knew the clock was ticking. Brenda and Karen were due back that same night, though they had no clue I'd returned early. I made myself a sandwich, poured a glass of water, and waited. At 10:43 p.m., headlights crawled up the driveway. The front door creaked open. Karen stepped in first, dragging her suitcase like a sullen teen after summer camp. Brenda followed, looking exhausted, her hair messy, eyes red. Neither noticed me sitting in the corner of the living room until I cleared my throat. Karen jumped. Brenda flinched. "You're home?" she said, voice brittle. "Vacation ended," I said. "Thought I'd come back to check on my things. Didn't expect company." Karen scowled. "We live here, you know." "No," I said calmly. "I live here. You and your mother are guests. For now." Brenda's jaw clenched. "Where's the money? Why are the lights about to be shut off? Why can't I access my bank card? What the hell did you do?" "I honored our agreement," I replied, handing her a copy of the document she signed. 30 days. No financial ties. No obligations. You signed your independence, remember? "You're such a bastard," Karen hissed. "We had nothing while you were off drinking rum and screwing around." I leaned back in the chair. "Oh, I had a wonderful time. But it's funny. You two had everything you wanted. Marcus, no responsibilities, no husband getting in the way. You were free." Brenda's voice trembled. "Marcus, he wasn't who I thought he was. He hasn't changed." "Color me shocked," I said flatly. Karen crossed her arms. "We're moving back in. End of story." I stood up slowly. "Actually, no. End of your story. I've already filed for divorce. And as for you, Karen, your freeloading days are over." I walked past them, up the stairs, and into the master bedroom. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. The silence I left in the hallway said enough. The next morning was oddly peaceful. Downstairs, I heard muffled voices, Brenda and Karen arguing, though they kept it low, like they were afraid to wake a sleeping lion. The lion was very much awake, and already showered, dressed, and sipping coffee while reading the final draft of my divorce filing. My lawyer, Ms. Elena Ruiz, had been a godsend. Sharp, methodical, and ruthless in a way I could only dream of being. She'd already submitted the paperwork to the county office that morning. Brenda would be served before noon. I stepped out of the house without saying a word and drove to my lawyer's office to sign the last set of papers. Elena smiled at me when I walked in. "She's going to lose it," she said, handing me a pen. "I'm counting on it," I replied, signing my name with steady strokes. "Any spousal support?" she asked. I shook my head. "She's voluntarily unemployed. Her choice." "And the daughter?" "She's 23. Not my biological child. No formal adoption. No obligation. Not a penny." Elena nodded. "You've been strategic. You're walking out clean." That was the plan. Back home, Brenda was pacing in the driveway when I pulled up. Her hair was frizzy, her eyes puffy from either crying or rage, or both. "You're really doing this?" she barked before I even got out of the car. "Just throwing everything away?" I stepped out, calm as ever. "No, Brenda. You threw it away. The day you crawled back to the man who used to hit you." Her face turned red. "You don't understand. He said he'd changed. And yet," I said, "you're back here, broken. Again. You bastard. Where's your heart?" I looked at her for a long time. "You stomped on it in Marcus's apartment," I said. "I picked up the pieces on a beach in Jamaica." Right then, a courier pulled into the driveway. "Delivery for Brenda," he said. I didn't say a word, just nodded at her. She took the envelope with trembling hands, ripped it open. The divorce papers stared back at her like a mirror. She looked at me, stunned, mouth open but no words. Then she dropped the envelope on the hood of my car. Karen stormed out from the house, phone in hand. "I'm calling Grandma. She'll sue you. She'll ruin you." I just walked inside, locked the door, and poured myself another cup of coffee. Let them scream. Let them run to whoever still cared. Because I didn't. Not anymore. The next few days were a masterclass in meltdown. Karen slammed every door she touched, stomped through the house like a storm looking for attention. She blasted loud music, made snide comments under her breath, and posted Instagram stories captioned, "Toxic energy," while sitting in a house she never paid a cent to live in. Brenda, on the other hand, was quiet, frighteningly so. She spent hours in the bedroom we no longer shared, texting Marcus, then deleting those messages, then pacing the hall like she was on trial. Turns out, she was. Only the judge was karma, and the jury was reality. One afternoon, I came home to find Brenda sitting on the couch, mascara smeared, holding her phone like it had personally betrayed her. "He kicked me out," she whispered. I didn't say anything. She looked up at me, hollow-eyed. "Marcus, he said I was a burden, that I ruined his life by coming back. He shoved me last night." Karen saw. I raised an eyebrow. So the man with a history of violence turned out to still be violent? You don't say. She didn't appreciate the sarcasm, but I wasn't handing out sympathy anymore. "Look," she said, "I messed up. I get it. But this isn't fair." I leaned against the doorway. "You wanted freedom, Brenda. Now you've got it. Freedom comes with consequences." Karen suddenly appeared behind her. "We need a place to stay. You can't just throw us out. We're family." I gave her a long, slow look. "No, Karen. You were the one cheering your mom on while she ran off with her abusive ex. You called me controlling, boring, heartless. So now, go live with Marcus. Or Grandma. Or whoever's dumb enough to open their door to you." Brenda stood up, shaking. "You would do that to your wife." "Ex-wife," I corrected. Karen laughed bitterly. "What about all the stuff in the house? The furniture? The car? What's even yours?" "Everything," I said with a smile. You two walked out. I stayed. Legally, the house defaults to me unless otherwise divided in court. And as for the car, Brenda drove off in my car. Registered under my name. Technically, she stole it. Brenda's face went pale. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. "Want me to report it stolen now? Or should I wait until tomorrow?" Neither of them responded. I walked past them both, opened the front door, and held it wide. "You've got until Friday to find somewhere else. After that, I'm changing the locks." They didn't move. But they would. Because even cowards know when the fire's real. Friday came faster than they expected. I gave no warnings, no reminders. I had already spoken to a locksmith, scheduled movers to remove their remaining clutter, and cleared it all with my lawyer. Legally, I had every right to reclaim the home. They'd vacated it, voluntarily, for more than 2 weeks. That was abandonment. By 9 a.m., the locksmith arrived. Brenda and Karen were still asleep, or pretending to be. I knocked on the bedroom door. "You've got 30 minutes, I said through the wood. "I suggest you start packing." Karen flung open the door. "You're disgusting. You're just throwing us out into the street." "You're not my responsibility," I said evenly. "Not anymore. And you never were." Brenda came out next, looking like a ghost. No makeup, hair tangled, shoulders slumped like the weight of her own decisions was finally pressing down. "Where are we supposed to go?" she asked, almost whispering. I shrugged. "Marcus has space." Her eyes filled with tears. "You know I can't go back to him." "You already did," I reminded her. "That was your choice. You made your bed. You just didn't expect it to catch fire." "I made a mistake," she said. "Please, just give us a little more time." I stood silent for a long moment. Then, "You have until noon." I left and went to a cafe nearby, sipping black coffee while watching the clock. By the time I returned, their suitcases were on the lawn. The car Brenda had driven to Marcus had mysteriously reappeared in the driveway, keys stuffed in the mailbox. No note, no apology. They were gone. And for the first time in years, the house felt light. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was peaceful. I walked through every room, opening windows, lighting candles, clearing out the emotional debris. I even donated the throw pillows Brenda used to obsess over. She always said they tied the room together. I thought they were ugly. I burned her favorite scented candle on purpose. Lavender and regret. That night, I slept in the center of the bed. No snoring. No icy silence. Just the quiet hum of a house that no longer belonged to liars. 3 days later, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was Brenda. "I just want to talk. Please. I know I messed up. But I'm scared. Karen won't talk to me. Marcus is blocking my calls. I'm alone." I stared at the screen for a moment, then put the phone down. I didn't block her. I wanted her to see the silence this time. To feel it. She'd spent years treating my quiet loyalty as weakness. But now that silence meant power. Later that evening, a knock came at the door. I checked the camera feed. It was Karen. Alone. I opened the door just enough to be heard. What do you want? She shifted her weight from foot to foot, clearly uncomfortable. Can I come in? No. She sighed, crossed her arms. I just want to know what your endgame is. This was the endgame, I said. Truth. Consequences. Peace. Do you hate us that much? She asked. No, I replied. But I finally love myself enough to stop setting myself on fire to keep you warm. Karen looked down, lips tight. She's a mess, you know. Crying all the time. Won't eat. Won't sleep. I raised an eyebrow. You mean now that she doesn't have anyone to manipulate, she's unraveling? She didn't answer. I softened just a hair. You're young, Karen. You still have a chance to build your own life. But you'll never do it hanging off your mom's shadow. And definitely not blaming others for the fire she lit. Karen didn't say goodbye. She just turned and walked away. That was enough for me. That night, I took one last box from the attic. Photos. Memories. A wedding album we hadn't opened in years. I flipped through it slowly. My smile in those photos looked genuine, naive, but full of hope. Brenda looked radiant. Happy even. But pictures lie. I tossed the whole album into the fire pit outside. Watched it curl, blacken, then dissolve into nothing. Some things aren't worth keeping. 2 weeks passed. The air in the house changed. It smelled less like lavender and tension, more like pine cleaner and freedom. I redecorated. Stripped the walls bare of her prints. Painted the kitchen a warm slate blue. Replaced the chandelier she insisted on with recessed lights. Modern, minimal, clean. Everything Brenda hated. I even bought a new couch, gray leather, sleek, no throw pillows. Karen would have said it was soulless. I thought it was perfect. One morning, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and stepped out onto the back patio. Birds chirped. No drama. No noise. Just stillness. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. There were no shoes. Just peace. And then, Thailand. A few years ago, I had joked about retiring early and moving to Thailand. Brenda laughed. Said I'd never survive outside the States. That I'd miss the suburbs, the status. I told her status wasn't peace, and she rolled her eyes. But the idea stuck. Now, with the divorce finalized, assets divided, or rather, stripped from her by her own hand, and the house soon to be listed for sale, I booked the one-way ticket. Chiang Mai. Mountains. Markets. Simplicity. A slower, quieter life. One where no one called me boring, no one talked over me at the dinner table, and no one sneered when I read quietly instead of scrolling on my phone. I started selling what I didn't need. Posted furniture on Craigslist, donated old clothes. Let go of everything that tethered me to the life that used to feel like a cage. Brenda tried texting again. Karen moved in with my sister. I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't answer. Another message the next day. Marcus hit me again. You were right. I didn't answer that one either. What did she expect? That I'd come rushing to her rescue like some old movie hero? No, I wasn't her hero. I wasn't even her husband anymore. I was the man she underestimated, and I had already walked off into a better life. The morning I left for Thailand, the sky was soft and gray, just enough chill in the air to remind me why I was leaving. I walked through the house one last time. The kitchen where we used to fight. The hallway Brenda and Karen once paraded through like royalty. The staircase I'd once sat at alone, wondering where I went wrong. I didn't wonder anymore. Every room was stripped bare. Clean. Empty. But not in a sad way. More like a blank canvas. It wasn't my home anymore. It was just a building filled with ghosts, and I wasn't going to be haunted by them. My suitcase was light. Just the essentials. Some clothes. My passport. The last novel I'd been reading before all this chaos began. At the airport, I had no one waving goodbye. No tearful farewells. Just a quiet walk through security and a new boarding pass in hand. And you know what? It was perfect. I landed in Chiang Mai under a crimson sunset. The air smelled like spices and possibility. My new apartment was small but clean, with a view of the mountains. The landlord smiled when I introduced myself. No judgment. No baggage. Just a handshake and a key. Over the next few weeks, I explored the city like a man reborn. Street food. Temples. Silence. New people with no idea who I used to be. And for the first time in a long time, I woke up every morning without dread in my chest. One night, while sitting at a rooftop cafe, my phone buzzed. An email. From Brenda. I know you probably won't respond. I don't blame you. But I want you to know I'm sorry. For all of it. You didn't deserve how I treated you. I hope you found peace. I really do. I stared at the screen for a while. Then I deleted it. Not out of anger. Just finality. Some stories don't need replies. They just need endings. Life in Thailand settled into a rhythm I hadn't known I was craving. Mornings started with sunrises over the hills and quiet coffee on the balcony. Afternoons were filled with walking markets, sketching in notebooks, reading novels I used to pretend I had time for. No stress. No guilt. No walking on eggshells around volatile moods or cold silences. I started going to a local Muay Thai gym. Nothing serious, just a way to keep my mind and body sharp. There were others like me. Expats who had left behind toxic marriages, high-stress jobs, and empty status chasing. We swapped stories over bowls of noodles and Chong beer, and every time I told mine, someone would always whistle and say, "You did the right thing, man." But I didn't need validation. I'd already found it within. I caught myself thinking of Brenda less and less. The pain that used to press down on my chest had melted into something dull and distant, like an old scar you sometimes forget is there. Every now and then, I'd get an email or social media notification that Karen had posted some vague, bitter quote. Never trust quiet men. Some people only pretend to care. That sort of thing. Let her post. Let her scream into the void. I didn't check the comments. I didn't check in. The man she remembered didn't exist anymore. One evening, I met a woman at a bookstore cafe, a local artist named Molly. She had a laugh like rainfall and eyes that looked like they'd seen pain and chosen to bloom anyway. We talked for hours. Not about the past, not about trauma, just books, colors, the strange miracle of starting again. We exchanged numbers. Nothing forced, nothing desperate, just two people meeting at the right time. As I walked home that night through the lantern-lit streets, I realized something. Brenda hadn't ruined me. She'd freed me. It's strange how life has a way of giving you exactly what you need, just never in the way you expect. I came to Thailand to escape, but what I found was something I never knew I was missing myself. Brenda and Karen? They became footnotes in a story that was once my entire identity. The pain, the betrayal, the anger, it all felt enormous at the time. But now it's just something that happened before the real story began. I never replied to Brenda's last message. I never followed up with Karen. I heard, through a mutual friend back home, that Brenda moved in with a cousin, that Karen tried starting a coaching business online, that Marcus got arrested again, and Brenda finally stopped defending him. But those aren't my problems anymore. I'm living a life I built with purpose, not one I was dragged through out of obligation and guilt. And that's the lesson I hope someone, anyone, takes from this. Sometimes the people you love the most are the ones holding you back the hardest. And when they show you who they really are, believe them the first time. Don't let loyalty to the wrong person become betrayal to yourself. If you're reading this and you feel stuck, unsure, like you're quietly fading in the background of your own life, I want you to know something. You don't have to stay in that pain. You can leave. You can start over. You can choose you. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's worth it. I didn't get revenge. I got freedom. And in the end, that was far more satisfying. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps the channel grow and lets us know you want more content like this.